Hey, welcome back everyone to Latte Night, the Dice Coffee podcast. And tonight we are joined by another very wonderful and special guest. You may have seen her on Roll for DAMEage, or if you're part of the Nerd Squad, you might watch her on Top 10 Nerd. Please help me welcoming the beautiful, the nerdy, and the wonderful Miss Amanda McKnight. I'm sorry, I still don't have the soundboard that makes the sound effect.
Yay!
That's all right. Imagine sound effects. Woo.
Yep,
I like it.
we're excited.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming. We start all
I
our
don't have a
guests.
latte. I'm sad. I'm very confused.
It's fine. We start all of our guests with a very simple question of your earliest kind of experience with any form of tabletops, games. What's your first system? How was it?
Yeah. So my first system, I think it was 4. I think it was 4E D&D.
Ooh.
It might have been 4.5. Yeah. I think it was 4.5, actually. It wasn't. 4 is the one that we all hate, isn't it? Isn't that the one that
The 4 is the one that doesn't exist, so
Okay, yeah. So it's probably So it's probably 4.5. But I've also played 3 as well, which was
Math.
interesting. Yeah. But yeah. So D&D and maybe D&D, and it was I was 17, I want to say, when I first played. So I played with a group of friends who basically, I don't even remember how we got into it. It was my boyfriend at the time's friends, and we were all like, let's all play D&D. And I think I was like I don't think I was the only girl that was interested. I might have just been the only girl that was invited because I drove my boyfriend there, because I was the one that drove and he didn't drive yet. So yeah, I got to play because I drove. And I had so much fun. I've always loved writing, creative writing. So ever since I was, I don't know, ever since I was like a little kid, like I think I started writing down stuff when I was like 8. I wrote like my great aunt a book when I was 10. So I've always loved storytelling. So for me, the thing that I really loved about D&D was this cool idea of like you get to create a story, you get to create a character, and you get to explore that. And I also have been a hardcore RPGer in video games since I was like as soon as I could pick up a controller and figure out what that did. So I think that was the other connection for me there, which was very nice. So yeah, and we played. It was a really good campaign actually. My friend Alex, I think, DM'd that one, and he is my tattoo artist and still friend now. So a lot of the people that see, I have like a tattoo on my leg that's of like a compass. People always love that tattoo and like, oh my gosh, I love it. And I'm like, that's my friend Alex, who's also an awesome GM and is also an amazing artist. So yeah, pretty cool.
I'd like to ask, what is your process in character creation? Where do you get inspiration in creating them?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So my first character when I played that game, her name was Red, and she was a dwarf who was trying to like save her orphanage that she grew up in. She was like an orphan it was very complex, and she like got married to this older man, and then she had to like save a slave that she fell in love with. I don't know where I even get the ideas for these characters. I think I like to try to pick characters that fit a little bit of something that I feel is me, but like in a more fantastical setting. So Red I really loved because she was this like heavy hitting. She was a barbarian, so she just smashed things with hammers. So it's really fun to play that dynamic. When I created Bree for Roll for DAMEage, I don't even know. I just love tieflings. People always make this joke that tieflings are like the most gay race too in D&D, and that like all of us gays are attracted to tieflings. I think there's something to be said for that. But so yeah, I hadn't really played a tiefling in a while, and I wanted to create someone who was kind of sneaky, but also I love creating characters that can talk their way out of anything as well. So I always find charismatic characters for some reason are a huge thing for me. I need to create a character that's not charismatic. Oh, actually, I did do that. I had a character. I did that. There was a character called Gunloda, who was a dwarf as well. She may have also been a barbarian, or she was a fighter. Anyway, she was a very awkward person. So she would just always drink a lot and get really loud, and then people would be like, "You can't be like this," and she'd be like, "No."
Does that also draw from something in your
yeah.
life?
I'm a very loud person, so that definitely still drew from something in my life. And I do like to drink beer. I'm a huge beer aficionado. What you cannot see pictured in my small apartment is I have a bunch of, I don't think they're anywhere here. I have a bunch of beer posters as well that are more up on this side. But yeah, I love craft beer and I love craft cider. So when I was playing with the ladies that I was playing with when I played Gunloda, we would always play at bars back pre-COVID. And I always had to have beer when I was playing because it was like part of my character. So I would always like be drinking a bunch of beers and like be getting really crazy. And we'd do investigations, and I normally love like murder mystery like vibes. But with Gunloda, she was so bad at them because we would like find a secret and she'd just like run around yelling secrets to people, and people were like, she had to sneak one time. It was bad. It was really bad. They turned it into a game so that Gunloda would play because she likes games. So, like me, I guess. She likes games.
That's interesting, especially the thing about the tiefling got me because one of our players in our home game, Jay, she it's a running joke that she has a thing for purple tieflings, and she happens to whenever she makes a character, they're either asexual or they're gay, and when they're gay, they usually go for tieflings. So
yeah, and
Yeah,
I think
that's so interesting.
yeah, I think it's more of changelings because they can go both ways.
She makes a
That's a
changeling.
good point.
Yeah.
That's a
She-
good point.
You should consider that next time. It's
Changeling
like
and tiefling.
cha-
I've never played a changeling. Maybe I should try that next time I'm playing D&D.
it's the Eberron changeling, and there's a small homebrew that I changed it because we play in a homebrew setting, and I always changed it. It's changeling, so it's like to avoid the question of what happens when the changeling turns into a woman and gets pregnant. It's like it doesn't matter. They don't have a concept of gender. They go either way. It makes it so much easier.
They just are whatever they want to be.
Yeah.
They're very gender fluid changelings.
If
I
you
like that.
You can turn into anything you want. There's no reason for you to just stay as one preference, right? So
No, that's so true. It's actually funny. I was listening to I don't know if you have listened to the Duncan Trussell Family Hour, which is
Yes.
a podcast that comedian, the Duncan Trussell does. But I always love every time he talks about this idea of our appearances or our genders or what it will be like in the future, and this idea that we will eventually have the technology that we will just be able to, like, with an app, be like, hey, today I'm going to be a male dinosaur or something. And yeah, and you can just shape, change, do whatever you want. He was like, if we had that, you cannot tell me that it wouldn't be weird for people to change gender because we'd all be doing it every day. We'd be like, nah, today I'm going to be this. I don't know, my eyes are big, small. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's true. I think as soon as that becomes technology we have, we'll be changing every day, and it'll just be an adventure. And I'm ready for it.
life would be so much more fun. Life would be so much more fun.
It would be, and colorful.
So it's on frame, and like I said, we can't help but talk about this. Is that stack of board games right behind you, over on your left there?
Yeah.
Let's
So
let's get started with what is, aside from tabletops, what is your first board game in general?
oh
And what is your
my
favorite
first
now?
board game. Oh, what is my favorite now? It's hard because people always ask me my favorite, and I do have the go-to answer. So I'll give you two answers for that, my conventional one and my real one. But for my first board game, I remember the first one I really fell in love with was Clue. And Clue, to this day, remains one of my favorite board games, even though it is a very classic board game. So for a lot of people that are super into tabletop gaming in terms of board games and stuff like that, as soon as we start talking about like Monopoly and Clue, there tends to be usually in the community like a rolling of eyes. But I love
Oh,
Clue, and I love the game of life, and I don't care what people think. I love the
But
game of
that's
life.
Clue is amazing.
Yeah. Clue is so good, and it never, I swear, I play it every time I still feel that initial joy. I also really loved Risk as a kid, so I played a lot of Risk.
Oh, that's
I remember there was
I
a,
love it.
yeah, Risk. There was a power outage in Ontario. I forget how much of the province had the power out here in Canada when I was like 12. And it was out for like days, like it was 4 days. And I remember I was staying at a good friend's house, and he and I played Risk the entire weekend. We played like one epic long game of Risk, and we would like play it, and then we'd go and do stuff and come back. And every time the sun set, we would have to stop playing because we didn't have lights. So we would just have to like go to bed. And I remember his parents being like, this is what people used to do in the olden days. And I was like, this seems boring, man. The lights go out and you just have to go to bed. You can't stay up and play games.
the
yeah,
lanterns
so,
exist. We can do that.
I know.
Yeah.
We had candles, but I remember writing by candlelight. It's probably why I wear glasses now, to be
Tell-
honest.
Tell
My
me you have a
favorite
copy.
game-
Yeah, go.
Oh, what? Of what?
No, tell me you still have a copy of Clue somewhere in that stack of board games you have.
Yeah, I think I don't know if I actually have my copy of Clue here, but it's probably at my parents' place. So I have more board games at my parents that are more my classic ones. I do have a copy of World Edition Monopoly though,
Yes.
which is I haven't played it in a long time. I should swap it out for Clue really, because Clue would get more playtime. And then
The highlight of
Oh, I
my
was just gonna say-
childhood was like
yeah.
when playing Clue, it was always screaming out, it was Professor Plume with the candlestick in the ballroom.
Yeah, so good. I love those moments when you finally have it. There's actually a new game that I played recently that I really like, which has kind of got a Clue vibe. It's called Search for Planet X. It's a Renegade game, and Renegade is a company that I also am a content creator for and sort of work with. They're really awesome. But Search for Planet X is kind of like Clue in space. If you were looking for a planet, so you're like doing like you're surveying space and trying to find it, and you get these like little bits of information that try to help you figure out where that planet could be. And we're all competing to sort of find out who will find Planet X first, and we have a certain number of rounds to do it in. So,
Actually
and you
sounds
play
really
it with
cool.
an app. It's really cool. So you don't have to set it up yourself, like in Clue. When you know if you set it up wrong, and then you're like, oh shoot, there's a candlestick, a rope, and
Yep.
Colonel Mustard's. There's no location. It sets it up for you. So that doesn't happen in Search for Planet X. And you can play it solo, which I love, because in these times it's hard to get people together to play games because we're all trying to stay safe. My favorite games right now, though, if I had to pick, my favorite that I normally tell people ask me that question, is Deep Sea Adventure,
Okay.
which is a tiny box game by one of my, don't tell Renegade I said this, although they're also one of my favorite publishers, but by one of my favorite publishers, Oink Games, which is a indie game company from Japan, and they do pretty much exclusively small indie games.
Okay.
Really, really cool. And it's like a screw you game. So you're little divers, and you're rolling die and moving your little diver down to try to collect treasure. And when you collect treasure, the only thing is it's heavy, so it'll reduce your movement. And every time you hold treasure as well, at the beginning of your next turn, you have to take breaths of oxygen, which drains the oxygen in the submarine you came out of. I like to assume we're all like little divers with like tubes, like old school, connected to the submarine or something. So if the submarine runs out of oxygen and you're still underwater, you drop all your treasure and then you like pull your emergency cord and go to the surface. So what you want to do is ideally you want to collect all the treasure, get back on, but you also want to hopefully suck up some oxygen before you get back so that other people don't make it back in time and they get boned and then they lose all their treasure. So that one's really fun, and it's like a 20-minute game, so it's really fast. And then my current obsession, what am I playing a lot of? I think I checked this the other day and it was still Fuse. Now Fuse is interesting because you only play every game is 10 minutes. So I've obviously played the most of it because it's short. But it's also, people are freaking obsessed with this game. So Fuse is a game, it's in that stack over there. And it is by Renegade, and it's a real-time game. So what that means is you have a timer. They actually have an app as well for this one that does the timer. It's just fun because it like counts down for you and tries to intimidate you while you're trying to do stuff. So you have 10 minutes. There are like 25 bombs in a ship, and you have to defuse all of them. And how you do that is you roll dice, and then you each take dice and assign them to your cards. It's a cooperative game, so it's us versus the game. So we're just trying to achieve this objective before time runs out. And you have like a bunch of bombs to defuse. And it's quick. So it's like you roll the dice, and then everybody's trying to rush to assign things. And if you can't assign things, there's a penalty, and it messes you up. And it's really fun. So that's Fuse.
It sounds panic-inducing.
It is very panic-inducing, and it's very addictive. Every person I've played Fuse with thus far has basically been like, immediately, let's do that again. Let's do that again. So it's one of those games that I can get it on a table, and then once I get it on a table, I'm trying to like be like, let's play something. Let's do, and no one will let me play it. And then every now and then I'll just pull it out and be like, oh, I just want to do a quick round. And obviously because it's Fuse. Because it's a co-op game as well, I believe you can also play it with one player. So I love solo games.
On that note, I would like to ask, what is the board game that you pull out just to be an icebreaker, like a party game that you would recommend?
Yeah, so for an icebreaker game, there's a lot of good ones.
D&D.
By the way, no.
Yeah.
By the way, what I usually pull out is either Secret Hitler or Sushi Go.
Those are both great picks.
Yeah,
I love both of those. I think usually my go-to for an icebreaker right now, I have a game called Taco Cat Goat Cheese Pizza, which is by Blue Orange Games.
Yes.
It's so cute, and it is just, apparently it's similar to this card game called Jax. I don't really know card games. It's really funny because people will, yeah. You've played it, yeah. So you're flipping cards and you're just doing a chant like taco, cat, goat, cheese, pizza, and we each take turns flipping. And then if when you flip something, the picture on the card matches what you said, then we all have to slap in the center, and the last person to slap in has to take that pile, and you're trying to get rid of your cards first. Another really good one that I love Love Letter. Love Letter is just
I don't know that one.
it's great. I have Batman Love Letter, I have Adventure Time Love Letter, and I have the deluxe one. So I have a lot of Love Letter in my collection. And then I also love Telestrations and Rhino Hero are also really fun, depending on your number of your group. Rhino Hero Super Battle. I don't know if you guys have played that one, but it's like Rhino Hero's a Haba game. So Haba is basically kids games. I love their games though. I'm like not a child, but I'm a child at heart, and they're just super fun. So Rhino Hero Super Battle is like you're building this like house of cards. It's like a giant tower or apartment building that's all like overlapping, interconnected. And what you do is you have little superhero animal characters, and you roll die to like move them up. And then you also have to add on to the house each turn. And the whole idea is you want to be the person on top when it collapses, unless you make it collapse. If you make it collapse, you automatically lose. And that's basically Rhino Hero Super Battle, but it's super fun.
All these board games. Well, I remember that the icebreaker game that me and my friends played. It's fun if you're all friends, but if you're a bunch of strangers, it can get a little bad. It's called Drunk, Stoned, or Stupid.
Ooh.
It's sort of.
How do you? I don't know that one. Tell me about that.
It's a bunch of cards in a box. It's very simple. You have cards in the box. You have turns. Every turn, there's one of you plays a judge, and then the judge passes each turn. The judge will draw a card, and he will decide who that card best describes, and then give it to that person.
Okay.
Now each card has really terrible descriptions, like she's completely basic, or he secretly hates his job but he can't resign, and then they just keep passing it around. And the concept is the person, when the judge reads the card, everyone at the table will make an argument to why the other person should receive the card. And the one with the most number of cards is the loser because it basically says here that you're a terrible person. With
Yeah,
all these things.
basically.
It's a lot
I
of
feel
fun.
like if I were to play that game, I would just take a lot of stuff. If people would pass me a card, and I'll be like, okay, I'll be this person. I'm fine with it. People are like, no, man, we have to talk about why you're terrible, and I'd be like, no, it's fine. I just accept I'm terrible. I'm cool with it. Yeah, there's another good one too that's in that vein of sort of party games. This one's a little not quite as I guess head buddy as that one is. But have you guys played Just One?
Yes.
Yeah, Just One is another good one. Although it is another cooperative game. I love cooperative games, so you may notice that a lot of my suggestions tend to be cooperative.
Yep.
I have some pretty aggressive friends. I'm not going to name names, but there are some people that I literally do not want to play aggressive games with because they'll be vicious. And I'm like, guys, it's just a game. No one's dying.
But
So I've always loved cooperative games for that reason.
but how have you ever played with those aggressive people? Have you ever played D&D with them though? Because in D&D there's a lot of
I
avenues for that to
haven't.
show. There's a lot of avenues to
There
show
are a
your
lot of
aggression.
There really are, and it's very interesting because I've played D&D with a few different groups of people throughout my life, having played for like over 10 years, and it's interesting because it really tells you a lot about people when you play with them.
It does.
And it's also been very interesting coming from my first experience with playing with an all guys, and then now I really only have played RPGs recently with all female groups, and then I've also played with like mixed gender groups and like different people from different walks of life and different orientations, and all of that really does completely change your experience. It's so, we always say when we're playing like with Roll for DAMEage that it's basically like our therapy session as well for the week, because every time we play an RPG we're like, I just learned so much about like myself and everyone and my trauma. What's happening?
I just learned that I know how to lie to people and con them. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or especially with the RPG we're playing now, Masks. There's a lot of stuff you learn about yourself.
We actually talked to your DM last week on that actually.
Oh, nice.
We talked to her
Yeah.
about she was starting a mask stream and why it was so cool, and I always wanted to learn the mask system, but it was a little hard for me to learn another system at this point, but I really wanted to. Super cool.
I believe in you. I think it's pretty, it seems like from what Lily has explained to me, it's pretty easy to get a hold of. I'm excited just for the fact that it's so storytelling focused, which I love. Yeah.
EJ?
Oh yeah, I mean, I just like to go back about you having a lot of friends that like cooperative games. I'd like to ask, how many times have you beat Pandemic?
How many
The
times have I
board game.
beat Pandemic? I've beat Pandemic probably a lot of times. So I don't know if you know this about me, but so one of the things that I've done in my life was I worked for a company called Snakes and Lattes. So they are a board game cafe here in Toronto. They had one location in the States. I don't know. I haven't worked for them for a while, but I worked there, and it was my job to teach people board games. So I was what you call a game guru. So when I worked there, I knew over 600 board games to teach. So hence why I have a crazy collection. But because I played so many board games, the one thing is people are like, you must be so good at board games. And I'm like, there are certain things I'm good at and certain things I'm not. But because I have a lot of friends that play, oh man, we've beaten Pandemic probably a lot of times. I don't know if I've beat it on the hardest difficulty. And I definitely played Pandemic Legacy. And that's a whole other ball game. That is, yeah, I did. We got destroyed every time I jumped into that. And I wasn't even playing permanently that Legacy game. I was just like a occasional player of it. We got destroyed. But it wasn't as bad as my Betrayal at House on the Hill Legacy campaign. I lost. I think I lost every game I played. I think I lost every game I played. It was pretty bad.
Here's
But
a-
I had fun.
Um,
So,
we do have those type of cafes here in the Philippines also, and it's really amazing that
Yeah.
their game masters would know most of the games that are displayed, and it's a really nice way to buy board games in their cafe. The ones that the
It
used
is.
one, it's always discounted. If you're just
Yeah,
trying to
it
hoard
is.
a lot of
That's
food.
so cool. I love
Yeah.
that. I don't think we ever did anything like that at Snakes, but gosh, I wish we did something like that. That would be a good way to also update your shelf, because when something is like, you're like, oh, we kind of need to replace this, you could just be like, hey, does anyone want this for like $10? And then at least
Yeah.
you're getting some return on your game, and somebody gets to play a game that they love, which is so nice. That's my favorite thing about teaching games to people, is helping people to really find that game that they're like, oh, what is this? This is so magic.
right.
I think that's so cool.
So, my question to you is that, moving aside from board games first, because we talked about you. Oh, so because you talked about masks and how you enjoy the storytelling aspect. I want to ask: is there a TTRPG system that you don't know yet that you would like to learn, or something that you don't play enough of, in your opinion, that you want to play more of?
Oh, yes! I have so many books of things, and I have not played them, and they just sit on my shelf, and I look at them and go, one day I will play you. Fiasco. I would
Yes.
love to play Fiasco. I've been trying to play this game for forever. It's so funny. My friend that actually encouraged me to buy it does not play RPGs. So I felt like when he was like, you should buy this, I was like, okay, you gonna play with me? He's like, probably not. And I've been just trying to get him to even play with me forever, because he really doesn't like RPGs. So I'm hell bent on like trying to find one that will open a gateway for him. And then the other one that I have is, I think it's called The Watch. It is a game about female warriors kicking
Oh
butt.
no, I don't think. I'm thinking of something else.
I think I have it. Yeah, it's like right there. I think it's called The Watch. But the other thing that I have played that I'd love to get back into, actually, I think, which is another Magpie game, is Bluebeard's Bride.
Yes.
So that's one I've wanted to get back into. I want to play Starcrossed. I'm trying to play that game for forever. And I also really want to play Kids on Bikes, which is a Renegade RPG. Yeah.
I don't know that.
And
one.
Overlight now. Yeah, Kids on Bikes is sort of like Stranger Things. And it's a very simple system, apparently. So it's very also storytelling focused more than mechanics. Overlight, I believe, still has quite a bit of mechanics, but it just sounds really cool. I did an interview with Little Red Dot, who is a content creator, RPGer, super cool lady, and she was talking to me about Overlight and running an Overlight game that she's going to be doing. And I was asking her, like, why do you love Overlight? And she just explained the whole theme of it, and how every character you make, even if it's the same character as somebody else, because these characters are so complex, there's always going to be differences. You never have to worry about anybody making the same character. The whole idea of it is that we all have light that is like a power, and we all focus it in different ways to do different things. And the art is also really beautiful. So the art in the book, I believe, is also by Kwanchai Moria, who's just a really stunning artist. And also a really nice guy. I met Kwanchai, I think, at Gen Con last year, and he was super chill. I didn't even know it was Kwanchai until later on in the night. And then people were like, that's Kwanchai. And I was like, that's Kwanchai? Oh my gosh, it's so nice.
So,
Like, thank goodness I would have fangirled. I would have been like, Kwanchai, I love your art. Sign my thing.
we've all been there.
Yeah, I that always happens to me. Pandemic. I play tested a game with Matt Leacock, who's the designer of Pandemic, and I didn't even know I was playing with Matt Leacock until like halfway through the game, and it was because my friend didn't tell me, because he knew I was gonna freak out, because I love like Forbidden Desert, Forbidden Island, Pandemic, Mole Rats in Space. Yeah, and so I was like, oh, that's who that is. And he was like, yeah. I'm like, you didn't tell me on purpose. Is that what happened? He was like, yeah.
In retrospect, that might have been a favor.
It really was, because then it was too late for me to freak out. So he's like, you can't freak out now because now you played half the game. So you look like a fool if you're like, oh, you're Matt Leacock. So, Matt Leacock also was super nice, and I can't talk about like the details of the game that I play tested, but it was really, really good, and it was something new he was working on, so it was awesome.
My question is that you, for example, you like storytelling RPGs. Sorry, what I mean is not so combat heavy games, if I'm understanding. So how have you ever tried a game like Vampire the Masquerade?
I've wanted to try Vampire the Masquerade, but I have not tried it yet, no. And I've had a lot of friends, especially someone who is, I love horror and I love vampires, so I don't know what I'm doing with my life.
Because when you get into the VTM system, you'll realize that it's very bad for combat because of how easily you could die. And how hard it is to act. You'd think a vampire would just, oh, I got scratched, heal. It's like, no, it's actually very hard, and you risk killing everyone around you if you try to heal. It's a certain mechanic. They divide your health bar to superficial, which you can heal easily, and aggravated. When it comes to aggravated, every time you heal that, it's only 1 point per day, and every time you do, there is a risk that you frenzy, which means you attack the nearest thing to you and just drain them.
Okay,
and
that makes sense.
And the whole concept of the game is that there is this internal monster inside you that wants to come out, and you're just pretending you're still human and you have control even though you don't. And it's sort of this personal horror story.
Ooh.
It's a lot of fun to play.
I love that concept. Yeah, I see, the one thing I've heard about Vampire the Masquerade is that it is very involved, and there's, I think, an event that even happens in Toronto once a year, which probably isn't or didn't happen this year. I think it happens around Halloween, actually. And it's a giant Vampire the Masquerade, like, live action game. So people go in and, like, they're all dressed up and you, like, role play. And I think you get characters ahead of time that you can, like, tweak a little. But that's something I've also always wanted to do. I have very little LARPing experience in my life, and I feel like I need to fix that in general.
You should absolutely try, if you're going to LARP, with that, what you just mentioned on VTM, because VTM is one of the most roleplay heavy RPG systems that I've ever seen. It is the entire core of the game, and the fun of it is when the characters come to life. It has nothing to do with your powers or the system. It's just the interaction that gives it life. Because the interaction is that you're playing as this thing that is trying to stay human. And you can see, and when people bring out that struggle in the roleplay, it becomes such an amazing thing to see. It is the best part of the game.
Yeah, that sounds great.
That's
what I'm into.
The other game I wanted to ask is, have you tried Call of Cthulhu?
Oh goodness, so Jess, who is also on DAMEage, has been trying to get us, she's been offering that we could play Call of Cthulhu. And this is a game that keeps coming up in every time I keep talking about TTRPGs lately. Yeah. Yeah, people are like, you got to play this.
Do you know the one difference?
I've heard it's life-changing.
It is.
What's
Do you know
the one difference?
The one difference between Call of Cthulhu and every other tabletop is that you can't win. There's no winning.
Yes.
You're not a hero. Eventually, you're going to die.
So the thing that I also think is cool about it is the time travel component. This acceptance that, like, our fate is sealed, so now we're just going to try to go back and see what we can do to fix it and kind of learn more about, like, what happened in this story. And I love that the focus is on that as opposed to some of the more problematic themes with Cthulhu stuff and H.P. Lovecraft, and this idea of, like, kind of a weird, not even just talking about H.P. Lovecraft and the racism and such, but even talking about this idea and the way we approach mental health. So I love Cthulhu stuff, and I love the idea of, like, going crazy, but then it's also that weird thing of, you're like, oh, I don't want to, like, also imply that, you know, going crazy is this fun, dangerous thing. It's not really that. It's like a real thing. So I love that the focus is more on the before, as opposed to the actual chaos that's happening at the end. Seems really cool.
The best thing about Call of Cthulhu is the sanity meter. This is, again, obviously mental health is not something to joke about, but when you're playing the game with friends and you're all counting your sanity meters, it starts to make you think more creatively. It's like, I can't risk going to another thing because my this is going to go low. How do I go around this? How do I become useful while I'm also this fragile? So it's like it makes you more creative and think, how do I solve this without actually getting involved in it because I can't take it anymore? And
yeah, because I can't handle the trauma, but I also want to try to help, but I also need to like acknowledge that I'm traumatized.
in the older
from all this
editions,
craziness.
I've actually talked to people who are able to use that in real life scenarios where like, I can't handle this, but I need to help. I need to help them. It's like, what do I do? It's like you start to think more creatively. It's like you don't have to be directly involved in order to solve a problem. If you are uncomfortable with it, you can find a different way. There's always another way to do it, and it's one of the unique
and
things
really
about
taking into consideration, where you're at. That's what I was just about to say. That sounds like it would actually be applicable to everyday life when we're like, this is too much, but I still got to do this thing. Like there are times when I'll be doing a million projects and I'm like, man, I'm tired. I have a lot of things to do. And I don't know if I can do this, but I'm like, okay, but how can I accept where I'm at and acknowledge, but then also try to progress somewhat so that I'm still, feeling useful.
And the best part of it is that when you kind of lost a certain number of sanity points, there's an in-game mechanic where you absolutely cannot do anything for a month. You have to stay at home in bed receiving help either from friends or private institutions for a month, and you're forced there because if you don't, you're going to lose more and it's going to be a lot worse. And it kind of mirrors, it's kind of a simplified version of real life where if you're overworked and overstressed and you try to keep doing more, it's going to get even worse, and at some point you're not going to be able to recover. So you just need that downtime of doing nothing. Just stay there.
I love that it forces you to rest. Like
it
like you
forces
Are you okay?
So
I wish in life we had that. I wish in life you got to a point and it was like, look, you can keep going, but you'll probably die, so you just need to take a vacation.
I mean, it does
like
happen in life.
Virtual marker.
It's just that you don't have a warning system. You don't know when am I overworking.
No, you don't. I need a sanity meter, so I feel like that is a great mechanic. I love that. And I love accepting the inevitable fate of just disaster and dealing with it. That's a fun journey.
I can't think of a good segue here, but because you're here, I can't just have you here and not talk a little bit about comic books. I can't just have you here and not talk a little bit about that. So the top of my head of the one thing I want to ask your opinion for, and I believe you already made a video about this, or you at least commented on it on a video in Top 10 Nerd, is how do you feel about free Jokers? Honest opinion.
Free Jokers! Oh my goodness. So actually, I really wanted to do a bunch of video content around this, and I feel like we didn't, but I mentioned it in a few videos.
Yes.
I really love it, and it's really weird because I've been listening to other reviews and I listen to some podcasts where people talk about comics and I read reviews on them, and it's weird because it feels very mixed. And I kind of get it because, I mean, I love DC, but I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried for DC right now. So I think a little people are wondering what the relevance of the comic will be. But for me, I'm just enjoying the ride. I'm just enjoying the story. There's a few panels, without going into spoilers for those who haven't read book one, I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but there's a few panels that really got to me. The end of that book, of the first book, and I'm actually going to ensure at my shop that I get a certain cover. I really want the Batgirl cover for the next one, so I need that. But the end of book one, there is a panel that when you read it, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. But there's just like one moment that I was like, wow, that is a lot. For me, the interesting thing about this book is that it's actually less about the hype surrounding Joker, and it's more about what the Jokers and Joker as an idea represents for these characters, for the Bat family, for Batman, and kind of facing that head on. So it's more about the relationships within the Bat family and how Joker has affected that, which I find to be really interesting because I love all of those characters. Barbara has some really good moments in book one as well, which I quite loved. There's lots of little things. There's just such attention to detail in that book. Jeff Johns just does a great job in bringing that all in and writing that into the panels. And then obviously Fabok is like this is the only reason I think we were all fine to wait this long, is because we knew the art was going to be this amazing, and it really is. And there's also just moments that are drawn. There's a moment with a raccoon where you think a raccoon's going to get hit by a truck. This is not a spoiler. This is just a thing that's in the comic that I freaking loved. And it was interesting for me. I'm going to spoil this moment with the raccoon. So for those who don't want the moment with the raccoon to be spoiled, pause this for like a minute 30. But the moment with the raccoon was, there's a raccoon, you see it in the panel, there's a truck oncoming, and you're like, oh my gosh, I was so worried for this raccoon. In these panels, they made me emotionally connected to an animal that has nothing to do with this story, but it does have to do with a raccoon. But it does have to do with the story, because the interesting thing that I think we should be acknowledging is this is a Black Label comic, so this is an adult comic. Yeah. This is the Joker. The Joker is has become a very violent character, and when we talk about things like violence in literature, violence in comics, there's always this question of like, what is too far? Black Label for me is a brilliant label that I'm gonna miss, because I think it does a really good job of taking those moments and not overdoing them. And so the moment with the raccoon that I felt sort of encapsulated that whole idea beautifully was the raccoon. You think the raccoon's going to get hit by the truck, and you're like, well, obviously, who cares? It's a raccoon. They could just hit this raccoon. The raccoon doesn't get hit by the truck. It gets away. So that tension was just beautifully illustrated. And then this idea of, we could do this, but we're not going to because it's needless. Like, it just seemed to me this, I don't know if this was intentional, but to me it was a thematic choice that basically said, hey, we see violence, and we see that in these characters, in the Joker, in the whole Batman verse, and we choose to only give you violence when it's relevant to story. And I was like, this is beautiful. It's like 3 panels with a raccoon, but I'm telling you, I don't know.
It doesn't need to die.
Like, this is profound. It doesn't need to die, and the suspense of worrying about something, if it's going to die or not, is honestly more exhilarating than the actual violence, right? Yeah. At the end of the day. It's the emotional weight. Yeah, the anticipation. So I personally loved book 1. I'm super excited for the other books.
I need a copy of it. The collection needs a copy of it.
So good. It's so worth it. The question is, do I get all the issues and then do I still buy the trade when it comes out, is what I'm contemplating. I have Harleen. I have the Harleen trade, which is gorgeous.
Let's be honest here. You already know the answer to that in your head is yes. Let's be honest here. You already know the answer to that.
Yeah. But yeah, so book 1 is great. I always feel bad when I hear people like talking about comics and sort of saying, oh, well, this isn't and this isn't. We're so spoiled, you know what I mean, too? Like, people are finicky about things, and I'm like, really? That bothered you? I love that. Okay. So yeah, I don't know if it'll be relevant. Unfortunately, it's kind of weird, because now where we are in the actual Batman comic, like, this was all already supposed to have happened. So that's a little strange, continuity-wise. But I'm just enjoying it as a standalone. Yeah, it was supposed to be, yeah.
I think the timeline's 5 years.
Now back. Yeah.
Weird.
It's weird, but I always read any Black Label story anyways as a story. I'm also a firm believer of, you can come into a comic, if a serial comic is good enough, you should be able to pick up any issue off of a shelf, and if it's really good, it'll suck you in. That's what happened to me when I read Far Sector a while ago. I just jumped into that with Green Lantern, and I don't really read a lot of Green Lantern, and I remember reading that and be like, this is Green Lantern? This is what this is? This world?
You've been missing out.
This is great.
Yeah.
I have been. And I jumped in on issue 7 of Far Sector, and I loved that. So I think when people talk about, oh, and this might not be relevant and whatever, to me it's like, but is the story good? And if the story is good, then it's worth it.
That's the point of a comic, right? The story. You buy it for a story.
You buy it for the story, and the artwork and the words and all of those things together, if they convey something powerful to you, then it doesn't matter. And I had no idea what was happening in Far Sector issue 7. I didn't even know what was going on because we were in the middle of a story, but I still loved it. I didn't need to know what was going on to enjoy it. That's what good comic book writing, I think, comes down to. I love when people are like, oh, but I don't know who this is, or I don't know what this is. And like, just accept that you don't know and then like move on. Like, be like, I don't know. That's what happened at the end of, or during Empire. There were a lot of moments, I think, historically, where people are like, what is this?
You'll know at some point, Claire. Just keep reading.
You'll figure it out. Or, do research if it really bothers you.
Wikipedia. Yeah. I would like to ask, one of the...
Yeah, I mean, it's weird to me.
Oh, yeah. I would like to ask, one of the saddest things that happened to me comic book wise this year is that Vertigo was merged with DC Black Label. They discontinued, and they said that future titles for Vertigo will be in DC Black Label, but DC Black Label has to release anything Vertigo wise at the moment. That's really sad. But I would like to ask your opinion about the number one villain in DC, Joker or Lex Luthor.
That's your big. I mean, I want to give it to Lex because I feel like Joker is overplayed at this point. And I mean, I love Batman Who Laughs. I love this whole crazy thing we have going on with these sort of like ultimate versions of these characters. But I don't know, like I'm kind of over it. Like Lex is number one in the sense as well that he doesn't have to showboat, you know what I mean? Like Joker's always showboating and Lex doesn't need to do that. So to me it goes to Lex. But we'll have to see
I'm so sorry if you get a lot of flack in the comments for choosing.
I probably will. But I do still love Joker. I just feel like, we're all tired of him a little. Like, I just want him. Yeah. Remember when he fell down a pit and he was gone for like 2 years? That was kind of a cool time. I think sometimes you get too much. And I'm like, Joker, just fall in a pit for like a year and then you can come back.
I think the best
I'm actually really hoping that the Joker dies in some capacity because I think he's due for a death.
I want to see that because of the question of what does it actually do to Batman? Like how is he going to be affected if the Joker is actually gone? Because that's always been talked about.
Yeah. Man, I'm really hoping with Joker War and the way it's going right now, no spoilers for anybody, but just one thing I will say is I'm really hoping that we actually see a Joker death because we need something in this event. Like I love this event. I love elements of this event. There's some really good things, and I'm just like, I need a power moment. I need a boom.
Something people don't see coming.
And that could be that moment for us.
Mm-hmm.
Something people don't see coming, or something that builds, even if it builds to it. If it's emotionally powerful, which it would be, this is the time. Then it would be cool. Especially with what Batman's going through right now with Alfred and all that.
The reason I agree with you actually, regardless of whatever flack I might get, but I prefer Lex is because it's the same reason I prefer Captain America over Superman. It's that Joker is Joker. He lacks morality, he lacks all of this, and he crazy, if you can use that word. And Superman is like this godlike being, but Lex and Captain America, they're human. They're some supernatural feats aside, he's still listed as just being human for Cap. And Lex even so more so, he's just a businessman. He's just a guy who happens to be smart.
Yeah.
And he is able to stand toe to toe with basically a god. And he's holding his own.
Yeah.
Even though he's doing it for bad reasons, it shows you what people can be capable of if they put their minds to it. It sort of heightens human capacity. Potential is what I like in him.
Yeah. And I think the thing that's interesting is there is a lot more similarity for me in terms of Superman and Lex Luthor's stories, in terms of who they are as characters. They're both these small town boys that have a lot of overlap in their characters. And it's sort of a different approach to a similar idea. So where Lex is the villain, obviously every villain to them, they're the hero of the story. But with Batman and Joker, although they do have a lot of similarities, I feel like they're both extra crazy as well. But there's almost, it's not as nuanced in terms of the two different paths they chose to take. Like with Lex and Superman, I feel like you could do a comic, could already exist, where they made one different choice and they like become the other person. I could definitely see that happening for them. And even when Lex has powers, he always still feels very human.
Yep.
So in the writing, when he's written well, which he usually is.
Here's a question for you, also in your opinion, because you already mentioned the Batman Who Laughs. And I think your co-host made a video, or at least you guys uploaded a video on this about maybe a day ago or 2 days ago that I just watched, is Most Powerful Gods in DC. And my question is, how do you feel about Batman Who Laughs and this Dr. Manhattan kind of mix thing that they did? It's like, how do you feel about that? Because I don't know how to feel about it at the moment.
I feel like the first time that was actually told to me, like what was happening, because I haven't actually been following the Dark Knight stuff, but I'm aware of it. But I just haven't been reading all of it. I've been reading Batman though. But yeah, when that was told to me, and it was like, oh, like I remember I saw something. I'm like, why is he blue? What's happening? People were like, oh, Dr. Manhattan, all of this is happening, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I think that was
That's a thing.
initial. Yeah, that's a thing. So I always find it interesting because I sometimes never know how I feel about things. And then people will remind me of my initial responses when they give me news. And they're like, your initial responses are so telling as to how you feel because you just respond to things off the cuff and you can tell instantly whether or not you like it. So I don't hate it. I think it's cool. I'm not necessarily here for it. I'm not necessarily like, oh my gosh, Dr. Manhattan. Let's let Dr. Manhattan be Dr. Manhattan. Why does everyone else have to be Dr. Manhattan now? Like, I like him better when he's him, but it's neat. And the whole thing with what's her name? Starts with a P. She's also there doing stuff. She's like a god as well, isn't she? Yeah, I can't remember her name right now. Persephone? No.
I have a friend who wants to ask your opinion on Year of the Villain in general.
Oh, on Year of the Villain in general. So, I mean, Year of the Villain has been going on for quite a while now, and the stuff that I've seen from it, there's been a lot of stuff that I've really loved. I really loved a lot of the cheetah stuff that they did, which was a while ago. What's happening right now? Yeah, I mean, there's some really good stuff. There's some really cool moments happening, and I think the whole idea of it being this like epic fight over, you know, the multiverse between like two villains is kind of a neat, like I just love that the villains get their day to shine. I'm a huge lover of villains in comics because I do believe it's all about perspective in any story as to who somebody is. Everybody's hero is somebody's villain and vice versa. Yeah. So I love when villains get like this little like moment to be like, it's our turn to decide stuff, because they always get snubbed. Like something that's always bothered me is how many times, like if I have to write about, I had to do a list where I had to write about Sabretooth winning things. And it was so hard because Sabretooth is a great character. Let's be real.
He is.
And yet Victor Creed always gets his butt handed to him, even though he's strong and has kicked Wolverine's butt countless times. He loses every fight. And I'm like, this doesn't seem possible. Like,
he should have more wins.
Because you're a villain, you never get a win. And so what I love about Year of the Villain is it really gives the villains the opportunity to have the spotlight and to win. And they deserve it. So let's let them decide.
This is a bit of an older topic, but correct me if I'm wrong, because I think I remember Mr. Freeze from Batman. He was given this sympathetic storyline in Batman the Animated Series about the only reason he's doing all of this is because his wife is sick, right? So I always enjoyed that. He's not just evil, he's not just a robber or petty thief or anything. He's doing this, and it's for a reason that he believes is right. So does that really make him that bad of a person? I mean, yeah, he's doing terrible things, from our perspective, but
People
from
doing bad
him,
stuff.
if it was you in his shoes
Yeah.
and your wife is like this and you had the capability to do all of this, can you really say that you wouldn't?
Like,
You-
would you do it?
Yeah, do you really think that
Yeah.
you wouldn't
I-
if you had all of this and your wife is on the line? It's like, it's a really interesting take, and I like it when the comics kind of show this sort of villain. The villain is not just pure evil. He's not just doing this because he's evil. He's doing this because he
Yeah.
has a reason, because he believes in this.
It's like when in the MCU they took characters like Killmonger. What they did with Killmonger in the MCU, they really made him like a very almost you
Sympathetic.
were on his side. Yeah, you were very sympathetic with him, and a lot of what he said made sense. I mean, it made sense
Yeah.
to the point that T'Challa as Black Panther was like, hey, maybe we actually should be listening to some of what this guy is saying because it's making me question. And I think a good villain always should make a hero question their own moral standpoint, right? That is, to me, what a villain can do for a hero that is a really good thing. And if you have a really good dynamic with your villain, it should be that. It should be there are times when you're like, oh, I don't know. Maybe like Reed Richards and Doctor Doom also have a lot of moments like that together. And where you sometimes are like, maybe we actually got to work on this together. I think the other beautiful thing in comics is this idea of like we have two very opposing sides. And it's really cool when you have those two opposing sides. And sometimes they're like, but actually, we're not that different.
Yes.
Because I think the world is every day moving more to this idea of there are two opposing sides, there are two opposing sides. And what I think is so important is that we really need to, as a culture, as a global place, is to have those moments. So when you have them in stories, it gives you the opportunity to be like, oh, this person that I think of as a villain, are they really, maybe they're not really as bad as I think. Maybe we have more common ground. So I always hope when people read stories like that, that it helps to bring us together. Because yeah, not every villain's a villain. And yeah, Dr. Freeze is a great villain for that, especially when they redid his story. But also I love in the animated series, I think in the Harley Quinn animated series, they said a thing recently where like Freeze was like, oh, I have to do this for like my wife. And they were like, really? You have to like rob all these people and like do all these crimes? That's you could get a job. I think it was in that show. Or there was a line or something like that. And he was like, And I was like, that's so true though. Because Freeze obviously has the moral high ground. But also he's like, yeah, I'm going to do all these criminal
His application is kind of... But it's always...
kind of twisted.
The best
You're
thing for me...
You're a capable scientist. You could probably invent stuff and sell it, but okay.
The best thing for me about comic books in recent memory, as opposed to... Because when I was a kid, I was given this box of comic books from like the 70s. And the best thing for me about it now, in the current age, is that it's no longer so black and white. It's not heroes versus villains. And then these are the good guys, these are the people you root for, these are the bad guys. Like, these villains have a reason for doing things. These villains are here because of XYZ, because of this. And now there's a reason why they are like this. And because of that, you start to question, what if I went through all that and this is my process? Would I be the same person? Like, are they really that bad? Or are they just circumstance? Like, it makes
a lot
you
of
think.
the reasons have become less petty, like is what we've seen. We've seen the exploration of these villains psychologically more in stories, which is cool. We used to have stories like Captain Marvel going up against Captain Marvel, original Captain Marvel, going up against like Jan Rog, and Jan Rog being like, I'm jealous that you're dating this lady I like, and that's my whole reason for trying to destroy everything. Like, that's so petty, dude. Like, just get over it. And we had things like that. We had stories where it was like Lex Luthor blames Superman for him losing all his hair, so now he's like, I'll get revenge.
I remember that. Like, Lex Luthor went bald. It's like, I'm going to destroy you.
I've literally read stories where I'm like, but why is this person doing this? Because it's an old comic. The answer is just, well, they're the bad guy. Like, okay, but why does this person hate Batman? Oh, there's no reason? Okay. They're just a criminal.
Yeah.
Okay.
It also makes you reimagine the heroes.
It's cool when you get to explore that.
Because like, there's an argument that
does, yeah.
What if it's right? What if Batman is causing all these villains? What if he's the reason they're all popping up? Like it makes you question things, and you start to see different sides.
It does.
Um,
Yeah, it does. And it's really great.
here's a question for you, opinion wise. What is the absolute not good or bad, but just the weirdest thing you have ever read or seen for you in a comic book of any publication? Like, what's the one weirdest thing that has ever come up in a comic book? Neither good
The
nor
weirdest
bad, just off, just weird in
Okay.
general.
It's not like super weird, but it's pretty weird. So one in Thanos from 2015 or 2017, I forget. But in the Thanos comic, I think it's 2017. There is a relationship that happens with the champion of the universe. I can't remember his full name because it's crazy. And Nebula, that is like the most random relationship I've ever seen. I think his name is like Tiberius something or other. He's got crazy hair in it. He's the guy with like crazy red spiky hair. That's pretty weird. I don't know. I send weird panels constantly to people at work all day that also are on the nerd team. Like we're constantly like clipping weird shit and sending it to each other while we're doing research. But another one that I come back to every time that will always be close to my heart is Spider-Man's animal tank top. Do you guys know about this?
No.
I think I
I'm
have.
actually googling it now.
What?
Let me go into my Marvel Unlimited app and I can give you the exact issue for it. But yeah, so there's a thing. He got it from a workout buddy. This was in the 90s, and it's just ridiculous. I mean, also the Gambit and Rogue miniseries. I don't know if you guys have read those, but highly recommend going back and reading those, especially Gambit's. There's a lot of he breaks windows for no reason throughout the entire thing. He's always like, I'm gonna leave, and then he just jumps through windows.
Yes.
And I'm like, dude, there's doors. Why are you?
Doors exist.
But it's the 90s, so I guess we're being edgy, so we gotta break windows. I just love when they were like, we gotta make Gambit the most edgy man. And I'm like, why are you doing this to Remy? But I love
Edgy
it. But I
Cajun
also
guy
love
who
it.
just kind of runs through windows because doors aren't a thing yet.
Doors aren't a thing. And yeah, breaking windows left, right, and center. I don't know who's paying for those, but it's not me. I'm not paying for those windows.
Professor
Just
X.
saying.
It's always Professor X.
Oh,
He affords
so
everything.
it is.
He can afford everything.
Yeah. It is, I think, Amazing Spider-Man 249. I think this is the issue. This is definitely the issue. Let me see if I can show it to you. Oh, there it is. Oh, yeah, he's coming. Oh, he's coming. Okay.
I don't.
I don't know if you can see it. But,
Oh, not yet.
A little bright.
hold it. Oh, no, I can't see it.
Yeah,
But
it's not bright.
249 is the issue this is from. Oh, is it this camera? Oh, it is this
Oh yeah,
camera.
I see it now.
Oh my god.
What?
Yeah.
And the hair too. The
What is
hair.
going on?
The mullet.
Is that a
thank
mullet?
you.
Yeah, I was thinking
That's-
it was a mullet.
Where? I'll tell you. I think this is where he explains where he got it. So, yeah, he basically like, I don't know if you can read it or if it's reversed.
I can read it. Oh yeah.
There's some great fashion choices in 90s comics that I highly recommend everybody check out. This
Let's
is the
bring
weird
back
thing
the
when I talk
90s.
about this stuff. People are like,
Yeah.
I am so for it. Apparently, there was a sale happening when everybody was running out of toilet paper. I got sent a picture of a comic shop where they were selling 90s comics for like 99 cents. And they were like, use them as toilet paper. I was like, no, I need to save all these 90s comics. Don't do that to my 90s comics.
Let's bring back.
There's so
Let's bring
many
back the
terrible and
90s.
great moments. Let's bring it back. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think in terms of moments of not just moments that are weird, but also just that outrage me, are obviously a huge one for me is the retcon of Wanda and Pietro not being mutants anymore. But
Yes.
that's weird more in like a, why did we do this?
It didn't need to happen.
Yeah.
It didn't need to happen, but we wanted it to happen, and now it's done. So I guess we have no choice. Actually, someone brought up a good point to me the other day. We were talking about how if that is true, then it means that when Wanda, what was it? In the Phoenix 5 story, in Avengers versus X-Men, that moment where Wanda like magnifies Hope takes on
Hope
Wanda's
Summers.
powers. Now doesn't make sense because Hope's powers, I believe, are only exclusive to mutants.
Yep.
Unless I'm wrong. So we were like, wait, but that doesn't make sense. So every now and then at work, sometimes people will just point out to me extra plot holes that they found about how I'm building a case, basically, that I'm going to give to Marvel and be like, look, you can either fix all these things, all this, or you can just change it back for me.
Fine,
That'd be good.
Everyone likes to shit on DC's continuity errors and everything, but people kind of overlook Marvel has those problems too. They also have these continuity issues.
Yeah, well, I mean, when we have as many retcons, right? I need a retcon button on my desk for every time I find a retcon in a comic, because I find a lot on a daily basis. I want to do a top 10 retcon list at some point. Top 10 most infuriating retcons.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, I just wish they retcon Jubilee being a vampire. I really don't like her being a vampire. Speaking of emo and stuff.
They already wrote her off and then they turned into a vampire.
And they'll be putting in Spider-Man. That's the rule.
Yeah. I did like when they gave Jubilee her baby, though, which I think happened when she was a vampire, didn't it? Or did it happen before she was a vampire?
It was before.
I liked Curse of the before. I liked Curse of the Mutants, though. I did like Curse of the Mutants. But yeah, I don't know. I think taking away the frustrating thing for me with that was like Jubilee has such awesome powers for like firework explosion powers. You take that away from her when you make her a vampire.
And now she's another edgy vampire.
Yeah.
You know, we need more edgy vampires in comics.
Her powers were literally sparkling and happy and bright colors, and then you just turn her into a vampire. Like, why?
Yeah.
Because
everyone has to be moody. Everyone has to have that moodiness, that edginess. Otherwise, what are we doing with our lives? I guess this is why I love Squirrel Girl. Squirrel Girl's never going to be edgy, and I love her.
And somehow she beat Thanos. So like, what?
The power of friendship. It is strong. What was I saying recently? I was like, I need to put her on like a top 10 like powerful characters list in the near future, and everyone will just like roast me in the comments, but I won't care because I'll be like, I don't care. Squirrel Girl's powerful, and I have the panels to back it up.
Yeah,
Squirrel Girl is number one.
She is. She is, honestly. She can befriend anybody.
DJ?
Yeah, I would like to ask for someone. Do you have any recommendation for someone who is coming back to comic books as a series that you can recommend that it will be easy for them to read?
Yeah, to jump into. What am I reading right now that's really easy to pick up? Let me see.
You actually have a box of comic books right there.
You just have there on your floor?
Comics in my bag. I know. I just have comics in my backpack. So I was just looking at what I was reading right now. I'm reading Cable right now. I'm just catching up on my Cable. This is actually really good. You could definitely jump into Cable, I think. I mean, I'm obviously going to pick something Dawn of X because a lot of what I'm reading right now is the Dawn of X line. I'm reading almost all of Dawn of X. And yeah, I would say if I had to pick one. I'm still going to say Marauders, I think.
Marauders.
I'm going to say. I mean, yeah, Marauders. I mean, you could still, I would say Three Jokers is still great. You could definitely just jump in, I think.
Because everyone knows Batman at this point.
Yeah, everyone knows Batman. I really love Marauders, though. I think you could definitely read that. Cable, you could definitely read this. Let me see if I can think of one more. Maybe something not Marvel. Oh, well, you don't really need to. Well, maybe you do, though. I don't know if you need to know it, but it's enjoyable, I think, either way. Vampirella Red Sonja team up is really weird and fun and kind of crazy, and I love it.
I think that's fine
And I
if
think
someone's coming back
love
in
it.
just for the fun of
Yeah,
it.
just for the fun of it. And I mean, I always say too, like people will say, how do you know, like if you're just coming, even if you're new to comics, like where do you start? And I'm always like, you can literally start anywhere you want. There's no wrong answer. It's just finding a series that you really are super into. I would encourage people to go to their local comic shop if they have one and just look at covers and look at serials and pick up like a couple just random things off the wall and read them and see if you connect with them. The other thing that's really good right now. Oh yeah, you could do that. I have read it. I don't own it, but I have read it. The new John Constantine Black Label, Hellblazer.
I've been looking for a
Yes.
copy of it.
Ooh, yes. Anyone can read that. I personally actually haven't read a lot of John Constantine. So I mean, I know of John Constantine and I've read him in other things. But it's kind of cool because I think this is all kind of new stuff that we're getting as well. So this might be a good place for you to jump in if you want to read John stuff. And yeah, John Constantine's just cool. He's a cool guy. And he's complex. He's not just like this like rough and tumble, like, I'm a guy.
He's got layers.
And he's got layers. And I love that he's like an onion. And I love that he is not just a tough guy. You know what I mean? Like there's
He
so
gets
many
his ass
people that we
kicked a
have that are
lot,
just
actually.
bad boys, tough guys. He does. And he is like a scoundrel, but he's not actually a scoundrel.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Yeah.
So yeah. Also, everyone should read Sandman. I will say this.
Yes.
If you have not read Sandman and you're jumping back in and you're like, I
Yeah.
don't know what to read, haven't read this, you need to go read
I have.
Sandman right now.
Yeah,
Yes.
actually, those last two are Vertigo things. I told you.
Oh,
Vertigo is
yeah.
really nice.
I was actually so sad when they were like, no more Vertigo, but
Yeah.
we're going to have Black Label. I was like, no. And then Black Label came in and I was like, oh, okay, well, this is great.
Give it a chance.
Now we're going to lose Black
Give it
Label.
a chance.
Now we're gonna
Yeah,
lose Black
I'm
Label.
so sad that I just found out about Young Animals. I didn't even know really about the Young
Oh.
Animals line. And I love that it was all new stuff. And now I'm sad because I found Far Sector too late. And I'm like, oh, there's only going to be 12 issues? And I'm like, why are you breaking my heart?
It's the issues we deal with as nerds. Oh,
It really is. You find things you love and then you find out they're canceled. And you're like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
it's like
Yeah.
it's like that sci-fi series with Nathan Fillion, Firefly. Like, oh, I found this late. It's like it's only this many episodes. Like, why? Why take it
Yeah.
away from
I
me?
do that.
A running joke in Big Bang Theory. Firefly.
I'm sorry,
So
we're
true.
we're a little over time, so I'm sorry about that.
Mhm.
But I just want
That's
to
okay.
cap it off by asking more of your experiences. How did you come about building the Top 10 Nerd channel? It's like, how did this start? From who came up with this idea, and how did this come to your plate?
I mean, so I auditioned for it, actually. The channel was already there. Like, it's so funny because people think, oh, like, Amanda, like, builds the channel and does all this stuff. I really just work there. I work there. I mean, it is a collaboration. Us creators do have says, and we do have conversations with people, and we really are all one big happy team. So there's that. But I mean, it's not my channel. I work there. I feel very privileged to work there. I have a lot of fun doing what I do. I auditioned for it. I had to script a video and I went in with it and made some jokes. And I didn't really know what I was doing. And I was really worried I wasn't going to be nerdy enough, actually. Even though I know like a ton. Yeah.
Anyone who thinks you're not nerdy enough after seeing this is going to have those doubts
I
removed
know.
right now.
I mean, there are still people that come at me all the time that think I'm not nerdy enough, but those people are always going to exist. So there's
Yeah.
not much I can do for that. But yeah, and I did this script, and then originally I actually didn't get the job. They ended up needing less people. Something changed. They didn't pick me, and then I ran into one of the people I work with at Snakes and Lattes when I was working there. And I was like, oh, hey. And I was like, I auditioned for the thing. How are you doing? And we were just chatting. And they're like, oh, by the way, are you still available? Because actually we need someone now. And we liked you. And I was like, oh, cool. And so they were like, come in next week on this day. And I did. And I have been on and off the channel for the past couple of years. But right now I feel like I am never going to stop making content for this channel because there's just so much to do. So yeah, and that's kind of how it went. So, and now I'm on Top 10 Nerd and Top 10 Gaming. And then also on Renegade Game Studios as well, which is a different company. But yeah, so it's crazy.
My entire experience with Top 10 Nerd has always been you on there. So I always assumed that you were there from the start or something, but
I was looking at how long the channel has been around for, and I do believe I've been there for most of the time, but I wasn't there when it was created. So I came in after that. I do remember trying different things. I remember when we used to do videos on cartoons. I miss that. I love cartoons. I want those to come back.
You know, I was always assuming do what people want. I was always assuming that when you guys show the panels and the comics you're talking about, is that you found them online and you kind of put the picture. But I'm starting to question if do you have scanned copies? Do you have these comic books that you're just scanning? Because I'm starting to think that you're scanning copies of things you own now.
Oh my goodness, I do own quite a bit right now of comics. I need to actually go through and get rid of some of my comics because I just own too much. But they're all so good. I don't know what
Blasphemy.
But yeah, so it's so funny. People will say like, you edit this and you edited this and you wrote this and all of this. And I've also had people think that other people write for me and I just say words. And I'm like, nah, like people are like, oh, the person that wrote this should have blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, hi, I'm the person
wrote this.
Who wrote it.
I wrote.
Yeah, me. But I don't know. People I think just think I'm just the face of the brand. But it is my thoughts that go into these things. But yeah, for a lot of that other stuff that you guys are seeing, like I have an amazing editing team that I work with on the channel that does everything. And as the scripter, I do try to find references for people, so I try to like point them in directions of things. But yeah, it is really a collaboration. It's really not. If there's anything I could let people know about a highly produced YouTube channel or any thing that you see, it is probably not just the person you're seeing. There's so many people behind the camera and involved in the back end part of that process that I wish they were on camera with me sometimes so I could just be like, these are people and they're great and like please appreciate them. But yeah, they're all great. You don't get to see them. Like Chris, our camera off, no one ever sees him. People are on other channels are like, show us Chris. And we're like, we can't now. He's a mystery. He's a mysterious figure.
He cannot be seen.
Yeah, but he's there and he is operating that camera for us. I could not film anything without Chris. So
anyway, thank you so much, Amanda, for being our guest, for being completely nerding out with the two of us over here. And
yeah, no worries. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for agreeing. I hope you find a more organized way to stack your board games and comics. Make things easier for yourself.
I think I just need another room or
a house,
space.
A closet,
another house,
a warehouse, maybe.
A house. Once I have my millions of dollars in Toronto, maybe I'll get a house.
Thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure. Thank you, and good night, everyone. Or good day for the rest of us here in the future. Bye.
Good morning. Good afternoon.